Hi, I'm Laura Stewart, board member of Indian River Impact 100, and we're here today to talk about how the $100,000 grant given to the FIT Scott Center for Autism Treatment has impacted the community. And very specifically, my guest today, Lisa Jaramillo, who has a young son that is in the program. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, sure. I'm happy to be here.
So how has it impacted you with the Scott Center opening in Vero Beach?
Well, the statistics are that it takes about $1 million to raise an autistic child.
Wow.
Yeah, it's because the therapies are very expensive. Typically, insurance doesn't cover the type of specialty therapies that our children need. The Scott Center spends time with my son, teaching him how to brush his teeth, put his shoes on, get dressed, basic life skills. And autism is an interesting disorder. Children can have exceptionalities and yet be learning disabled. My son, for example, can memorize a 2-minute long monologue, but he doesn't know how to put his shoes on and tie them so that they're not too tight. Those are the things he has to learn to do. But there are changes coming with insurance coverages to try to mandate some of this coverage, but for the Scott Center in particular, the grant has impacted us by being able to help pay for services that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to receive.
Now, you told me that you thought your son was doing fine, and then at 3 there was this change when you're trying to get him evaluated, and you're being told conflicting information, and when you got to Scott Center, that's when things really started to shift for you?
That's right, that's right. There's definitely one school of thought that thinks children should wait until after age 4 for a diagnosis. That's kind of the older school of thought. There's a lot more information out there that children can be diagnosed much younger and that early interventions are very important. With my son's particular situation, the preschool had highlighted to us that there were some developmental delays. We went down the path of speech therapy, physical therapy, but no one had ever used the word autism. And so we knew that there were some developmental delays, and it wasn't until we connected with the Scott Center and we went to their Melbourne clinic for a full assessment, and that was when we received the diagnosis.
So how has it impacted your life with your son and your son's life that you can do this right here in town where you live?
Right, right. Well, one of the main charities for autism is called Autism Speaks, and the reason for that is because children with autism is a communication disorder. So I credit the Scott Center with giving my son a voice and getting his voice back. He was losing language and, sorry. He was losing language and we didn't know where to turn. And the Scott Center, they turned his life around and have been so instrumental in our lives.
I can't actually imagine what it's like to be having a child that's lost the ability to communicate with you as a parent and for you to communicate with them. And some of the stories you shared with me over the phone were just heartbreaking, but at the same uplifting when you said how he started re-engaging with your family.
Yes, autistic children can, they can go into their own world, and in some cases you don't get them back. They go off into their own mind and they don't want to interact, and it has nothing to do with the family dynamic. It has to do with how their brain is developing. It has to do with mental misfires. It has to do with how their body is developing. And so for my son in particular, having these highly trained PhD level individuals to give him the proper interventions and get him communicating, now I know what his preferences are. He used to never be able to tell me what he liked, so I would always just have to figure out, it's time for dinner, put this down in front of him, does he like it? Can't really tell. And now he has a voice. He can tell me what his likes and dislikes are. He can tell me what he wants to do. Before treatment at the Scott Center, he didn't know words like what, how, why, when, where. He didn't comprehend those questions, and he certainly couldn't respond to them. And with all of the interventions that the Scott Center's provided, I have a child who can communicate with me.
That's just so wonderful. Any last thing you'd like to share?
Well, it's been life-changing for our family. And I only wish that there was enough funding so that every family in Indian River County could receive services. It's an epidemic. 1 in every 64 boys are being diagnosed right now. I know that the Scott Center had to select certain families with some of the most severe spectrum to be able to assist first, and I wish that there were more funds to help more families.
So maybe they can apply for another grant, or maybe some of our listeners want to donate money directly. But I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it
Okay.
moved me, and I'm grateful.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.